change can always seem mildly alarming, and it's always a sign of new energy and new possibilities. So thank you, Jennifer, for guiding us through this time of change. I started last week a two-part series that I call the 7 Lively Sins. And I started with this quote from Father Richard Rohr, who is somebody, a theologian, a Franciscan theologian, whom I just really have a tremendous admiration for. I receive his daily, do you too, Bob? I receive his daily messages, and there's always something there that resonates. And he wrote this not so long ago. We thought we came to God by doing it right. And lo and behold, surprise of surprises, we come to God by doing it wrong and growing because of it. And that really is the theme of these 2 Sundays. They're not the 7 deadly sins, they are the 7 lively sins. And we looked at the first few of them last week. We're going to continue with that, sum it up this week. I want to begin with where this came from for me. My understanding of the 7 lively sins owes a great deal to a sharp man that I met when I was minister in Dallas, named Michael Dowd, and his book called Thank God for Evolution. Michael is one of those bridges between spirit and science that we need so desperately today in the world, it seems to me. He shows how this science of evolution can help us to understand and work with energies that are both spiritual and human. And he does this by describing vividly the evolution of the brain. And this is not a spiritual evolution alone. This is the science of how our brain evolved. We begin with what he calls reptilian brain, the cerebellum and the brainstem, the brain that links us to earlier forms of life on the evolutionary trail. Reptilian brain includes such involuntary functions as breathing and heartbeat, obviously, but it also is all about the 3 S's: sustenance, security, and sex. Those are the basic needs. We need to be protected from our enemies. We need sustenance to live. We need sex to continue to grow as a species. These basic animal instincts were essential to our survival in the world in which our early ancestors found themselves, and they still have an important part to play in our world today. But because we have evolved, it is no longer sufficient to allow our reptilian brains free rein, tempting though that might be from time to time. And noisy as that reptilian brain can get, can't it, sometimes? I need sustenance, I need security, I need sex. Need it on a very basic primal level. But we don't work at that level anymore. No, we don't. The evolving brain added a second realm, which includes the amygdala, the hippocampus, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, and the insula, which Dowd calls cuddly mammal brain. So this adds a dimension of feeling and fellowship. We form families, clans, tribes. We value our relationships. At least we value relationships to people who are like us. We form hatreds and fight wars against people who are not like us. And we're seeing too much of that in the world today. As evolution continues, we add the dimension Buddhists call monkey mind, the neocortex, what Charles Fillmore called thought people, the realm of thought people, full of language and memories and chaotic ideas scattering and shrieking and competing for attention. And we all know what that feels like, what that sounds like when we're listening to it in our heads. You know, those thought people just running around bumping into each other and trying to get my attention and trying to accomplish what they are absolutely convinced is essential to accomplish. And finally, a very late arrival in the evolutionary process, we have the frontal lobes, that are the center of executive energy, decision-making, purpose-defining, reasoning, believing, and making creative choices. We can certainly see all of that, I think, in our first sin for today, which is wrath. To the reptilian mind, wrath is its second nature. It is an expression of the fear of not enough. Not enough security, not enough sustenance, not enough sex. To the mammalian mind, wrath is directed to those who threaten our relationships, our communities, our families, including people from within those relationships and within those families who also seem threatening. Monkey mind throws wrath around at any frustration or disappointment. Monkey mind stokes the fires of wrath by remembering past disappointments and hurts, projecting them into the future, reacting to the what-ifs as if they were for-sures. And that's a relatively late development. The first two stages of mind that he talks about are simply devoted to the now moment. It's just what I'm feeling, what I believe in this moment. It's when we get to monkey mind that the voice starts saying, remember the way that this happened the last time, and oh my God, this is going to happen again, and you know what's going to happen when you do this, and you can go crazy. I was talking to Sean about something this week, I don't know what it was, and I said, I guess it was wondering whether the traffic would be extra busy this Sunday because of the holiday, and I said, it could be really, it could take us, we better allow some extra time, it could take us a long time. He said, Ed, or we could be just fine. Oh, what a concept. Oh, there goes monkey mind again. Now, it might seem difficult for the frontal lobe, the higher purpose part of my brain, to find any positive use for wrath. But in its positive sense, wrath is the divine discontent we feel. Divine discontent when we see possibilities being ignored, when we see people suffering needlessly, when we see human needs not being met. Linked at our highest level with love, reason, and spiritual purpose, the energy of wrath motivates us to take action, to take a stand, to refuse to settle for anything less than the possibility that Jesus holds out to us, the possibility of creating choice by choice the kingdom of heaven. The point is that each of these qualities that we call deadly sins can express both positively or negatively, efficiently or inefficiently, according to which part of the brain is involved, and we are not powerless over that process. There was a time we were. We are not powerless over that process. And I think we can see that when we look at the sin of envy. Reptilian brain envies anyone whose basic needs are being met better than mine are, and who seems to be keeping my good from me. Mammalian brain envies someone else's relationship or sense of well-being or happiness. Monkey brain is envious of things that someone else has and that I don't. Monkey brain is, you don't have enough, we don't have enough, we got to go get more, we should maybe take from her. And that's the voice that is constantly running. To the higher purpose brain, the same energy of envy expresses as an appreciation of the varieties of good, varieties of relationships, varieties of ideas. And at this level, envy is an energy that encourages me to create more, to consider greater possibilities for myself. I think perhaps the greatest source I know that supports these ideas is the part of the Sermon on the Mount known as the Beatitudes. Jesus understood that it wasn't about being perfect all the time. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. Blessed, 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 because that's how you're motivated. That's what motivates you to move forward. That's what leaves you discontented with the inadequate expression you're experiencing today. There's more, and I'm being called to bring more of that into expression. And the next lively sin involves the very process of creating, making manifest the infinite potential for good that we have found through the first three steps of the creative process. We've relaxed the certainty we've relaxed in the certainty of God. We've awakened to our own identity. Those principles we affirm every Sunday. We have appreciated the potential for infinite expressions of love and joy in the divine substance in which we live and move and have our being. We know that potential is here now. Now we begin to decide how we want that divine substance to move into manifestation. Imelda Shanklin, in her wonderful basic unity text called What Are You?, describes this as breaking off pieces of infinite substance and making them manifest in our mortal lives. Breaking off pieces of infinite substance and making them manifest in our mortal lives. Used properly, this step is our very purpose in being here in human form at all. This is the heart of everything. Overindulged, however, this becomes the very tricky and sadly familiar energy of greed. I'm not content to create, I'm creating as I look around and seeing what other people are creating, and where's my good, why is my good not there? Most of you know I have a 12-step background, and my first sponsor was a fairly well-off guy who had a house in the Hamptons, and I kept thinking, where's my house in the Hamptons? I've been sober for like 6 weeks, where's my house in the Hamptons? I was watching his good instead of appreciating the infinite ways that good was already expressing in my life. Money is a fine and useful expression of infinite energy. Creating money allows us to extend our creative energy, to expand it, to share it with others. Thomas Aquinas wrote that greed is a sin in which man condemns things eternal for the sake of temporal things. We give up what these things represent. We give up the spiritual power behind them. We just focus on what they are and why we need to have them. And the great paradox is that because the fourth of these steps is so crucial to the creative process, the inefficiently expressed energy of greed can create more negative experiences than any other. Greed becomes dangerous when and because we begin to see through a veil of fear. This good that I so enjoy in the moment may not last. I need to lock it up. I need to accumulate more than I can possibly use in this moment so that I am never without in the future. And therein lies the beginnings of civilization as we know it. There's not enough good in the moment, or if there is enough good in the moment, there may not be enough good in the next moment. So I better build a warehouse and start storing things. Then if I start storing things, I've got to protect them, so I've got to put armed guards around them to make sure nobody gets at my stuff. And there we go. There we are. From Midas to Ebenezer Scrooge to the present day, the dangers and negative energies of greed have been explored time and again. We must appreciate, not demand. We must share and not hoard. We must create from an energy of love in the moment, not from a fear of lack in the future. You're doing such a beautiful job of that here. I think the whole community here is doing that. We're not looking at lack and saying, oh my God, how are we going to solve this? We're looking at the energy that we are. We're looking at the abundance that we represent, and we're saying it's here. It's here. We just have to manifest it. We have to manifest it through appreciation. We appreciate each and every person who's a part of this community, whether they're here this morning or not. We appreciate them, and we know that out of that appreciation and out of that love will grow all of the abundance we need to meet our needs. And there's one lively sin left. And yes, you've been waiting to hear it, I know. We are basically terrified of this seventh sin, and we are wild for it. Lust is traditionally defined as an inordinate craving for the pleasures of the body. The Latin word, I love this, the Latin word is luxuria. Lust. Our fear is that by exploring the pleasures of the body, we will be lost to our spiritual purpose. And may I leave you, as my Thanksgiving gift, my assurance that this is not the case. We aren't here to avoid, renounce, or resist the bodies through which we experience this human experience. We are not here to judge ourselves negatively. We are not here to think we're being punished, so that means our bodies are evil, so that means we do as little with our bodies as we possibly can, and anything we do is highly suspect. That is no longer true. We really have to realize the earth-shaking importance of what Father Rohr wrote here. That we once thought that we approached God by doing everything right. Now we discover that we discover God by doing things wrong and learning from them and making new choices. That's how we create. That's what we're here to do. We're not here to be perfect. We were perfect in spirit. We're here to bounce through this experience, to learn, to make choices, to suffer a little bit, to get burned, get our hands burned a little bit, and to move on, to learn, to move on.
Amen.
And so we come to this final awareness of the 7 lively sins series. It is only from the perspective of fear-based, hierarchical understanding of God as a petulant, unpredictable force, demanding absolute obedience, that the 7 great sins seem evil, seem indeed to be deadly. The centuries-old insistence on the horrors of sloth, pride, gluttony, greed, envy, wrath, and lust is based in hatred and fear of our physicality, our very humanness. Certainly, each and all of them can be misused in ways that can become serious obstacles to our spiritual purpose. This invariably happens when our 4 functions of consciousness are not properly balanced, when the senses are calling all the shots, or the intellect, or when we're emotional basket cases stuck in victim consciousness. But the energy each sin represents is essential if we are to move on to claim our spiritual power. We experience the sins so we can claim our power over the sins, and we can move on to higher and higher levels of consciousness. So this Thanksgiving, I think we're invited to be grateful for the 7 lively sins. To be grateful for the mistakes we have made in the past year as we look back. To be grateful for the lessons we have learned. Because if we hadn't learned lessons, we wouldn't be moving forward. And if we weren't moving forward, there would be no purpose to our being here in the first place. You know? So look back, recognize the places where you stubbed your toe, recognize the mistakes you made along the way, and be grateful for them. Be grateful that your awareness today lifts you above the level you were at when you made the mistake. So from that perspective and for that reason, to each of you and to all of you, happy, happy, happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, thank you.